David Brooke, so glad to have you here, my friend, on Be the Solution podcast. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thanks for having me this morning.
Oh, yeah, let's go get them. End of June here. And gosh, I think it's been quite the ride already this year.
It has been a ride. Yeah, I have a newborn who is 12 weeks old, so I barely sleep. So you want to talk about a ride? It's been a ride this year so far. Besides just an absolutely crazy market. So yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for having me.
absolutely. Well, congratulations. It's such an exciting time. And sooner than later, your little P will be running around and you'll be like, oh, my brother want me. Shoot, it's just a little baby, and I was up all night. Now I'm chasing.
Yeah, I'm excited about I don't want to miss any of these moments, that's for darn sure. But waking up this morning to change diapers and do that kind of stuff, some mornings I wouldn't mind sleeping in a little bit more. But
Yeah, I,
again, thank you for having me.
I'm sure. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today, David. You know, we were just talking in the green room and about your journey, and I thought based on what some of the things that you just said, um, it would be so wrong of me not to bring it up.
Sure.
So, so you mentioned that um, your liver was failing.
Yeah. Yeah. One point in my life.
So tell us the backstory.
Yeah. So, yeah, just a little bit of backstory. So, I've been in real estate for probably about 15 years and never intended on being in real estate. I, was intending on becoming a youth pastor. And the reason is that, leadership like that had been so important in my life, had helped form me as a man. And I wanted to, in other ways, create those same like types of leadership, either through programs or through one-on-one mentorship or discipleship or whatever that looked like in my life. And then I wanted to take that to the next level. And so I went to become a pastor. And then what I found out was life showed up. And I remember I had to dropped out of college, went home. Mom was dating some guy. Actually, she was married to some guy. Guy went on drugs. And the guy went on drugs and just like it decimated life for us. And I had to start waiting tables. And
How old were you now?
man, I was so 17, 18 years old, 19 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was it. And then, life just like sped ahead for years. I was waiting tables. And eventually I got into the construction industry. And the way that
Mhm.
happened was an incredible story. I was in South Africa, and we had gone there for a family trip, surprisingly enough. And I was there sitting on the beach, and I was asking God, like, what was happening in my life? I was so frustrated, Maria, because I went to school to be a pastor. That's what I wanted to do for my life, and I was waiting tables, and it just felt like, man, I'm not doing what I want to do in life. And how long do I need to be in the season for? And I just remember like holding this piece of wood, and I was carving it, and I just asked God, like, what do I need to do? And I don't know what you believe. I don't know what your listeners believe. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with that. All it has to do with was I just heard a voice in my head, in my heart, and it was, I need you to do three things. And I didn't have a good relationship with my dad at the time. And he was like, hey, I want you to get back to hanging with your dad. And I had really stepped away from my community at my church. And he's like, hey, I want you to get back into community. And the last thing was, I want you to go work construction. And I remember sitting there, and Maria, listen, I'm in real estate. I can fix a toilet. And I think that I'm like, a big hero or something like that. Uh, I'm not handy. And so I hear this, and I know it sounds crazy, and you're probably already like, I need to get you off my podcast right now, but this is my story. And so, I go home, and I go to, get back into community with my family, and with my dad and with my church. And during that time, I remember getting up one morning, and I heard another voice. I know it's crazy. It's not like audible. It's like you have this sense inside. And it was like, today's the day. And so I get up and I get in my car, and it's like, drive over here and drive over. And I know this sounds crazy, but I I go and it's like, take a right here, take a left. And then all of a sudden around the corner, I end up in a town that I'd never like normally traveled to. And it was like, turn over here. And I turned over there and there was a new construction development right there. And I pulled over to the side of the road and I was like, okay. And it was like right here. So I get out of the car and it's go ask for a job. And so I get out of the car and I see this grumpy old man walking down the hill. And I go up to the guy and I'm like, hi, my name is David Brooke and I'm here for a job. And this grumpy old guy takes a look at me and he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, yeah, I'm here for a job. He was like, that's really strange. He goes, because I just let a guy go at the top of the hill and I was coming down here to post a new job online. And I was like, well, I'm here for it. And he goes, well, what construction experience do you have? And I said, none at all. I didn't. All I had was waiting tables and I could play guitar and sing in a church. And, I was learning how to, I could lead a Bible study or something like that, but that was about it. And he was like, yeah. He was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I can do anything. I'm the hardest worker, And so he was like, well, I can give you $15 an hour. And I wanted 18. And so I said, no, I want $18 an hour. He's like, you have no experience. You have no, reason to be here. I was like, well, that's fine. I'll get in the car and ask God to show me the next place to go. And he thought it was the craziest thing that was the story. And so he gave me the job and I worked in construction for a long time. And then to get to your point about like how my liver shut down, I was diagnosed with 2 blood disorders. My dad is adopted and he's from Northern Europe. And they apparently they have these funny, little, I don't know, I don't want to call it like a disease, but like, it's Northern European issues that happen with blood. It's called hemochromatosis. So it's like, your body builds up all this like iron. And I also have another one called spherocytosis. So basically what ended up happening is that my blood is like a little bit, the red blood cells are a little bit more spherical shaped. And so my spleen was killing my own blood cells. It still does it today. And then what ended up happening was as it like kills your blood cells and it breaks apart. And so those pieces to a blood cell flow around your body. So like my eyes would sometimes be jaundiced because there's bilirubin inside of blood cells. And so it looks like you're having liver failure. And then some of that iron would go around your body as well and get stored in your organs. And so like I have to go and get phlebotomies every month. So like I know this sounds crazy because we're on your podcast probably talking about real estate and stuff.
No, it's
nothing to do with it.
It's about life. It's about
life. And
it's
so
about being the solution. It's
yeah.
It's not only real estate. There's so much more in life than real estate.
There certainly is. There certainly is. And so like I found myself where eventually like some of those particles like all got stuck basically in my gallbladder and like liver area. And it basically all backed up and it's like shut down. And so I was completely yellow. I wish I had something like yellow around me, but it was like completely yellow. So I was like,
where was this?
That would have been 2010. Yeah. So it was a wild time. And it was funny is so
what happened? Like, what did you do? How did you get better?
Yeah. How did I get better? So they brought me to a really great hospital around here. And I basically stayed for 2 weeks and they couldn't figure it out. They were like, hey, we're going to have to put you on, put you on drugs and everything else. They did. It didn't calm it down. They didn't know at the time exactly what was happening. And then they shipped me off to Yale, which is like the best college and hospital around in Connecticut,
sure,
which is where I'm from. And they basically put me on a liver transfer list. And, everything was just like literally going down and my life was just like crashing. It was crashing really hard. And that's, I think like one of like my stories or the parts of my life is just these amazing, like low spots. And then in my life, like I always tell the testimony of God and like how he pulled me out and got me to another place. So be the solution. If there's any solution, God's been my solution in my life. And it's been really, really incredible to watch him like do that because
no doubt is the power of prayer.
Yeah. So that's what happened, Maria. That was the power of prayer.
In Jesus.
Yeah. So at the end of it, they were like, well, we don't know what to do with you. So we're going to put you on a liver transfer list. You might as well go home and just be at least at home instead of a hospital bed. So I went home, and the church came around me and prayed for me. And
So where was home at the time? Were you
yeah,
living?
I lived at my mom's house.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived at my mom's
So
house.
2010, you're at your mom's. You
Yeah.
were just starting to sell real estate?
No. So I was coming out of real estate in construction. And the crazy part of it was I had done construction. That was like the direction that I was supposed to go in. And in 2008, 9, it started to crash. So I found myself out of a job. And I don't know what I said at the start was I felt like God had told me, like, go have, or, get it back into a relationship with your dad, which I did not have a good relationship. Well, my dad's a real estate appraiser. And during the crash, real estate appraisers were so busy, like ridiculously busy. Every bank in the world was asking, like, hey,
Foreclosure,
yeah,
closure,
what's going on?
foreclosure.
Yeah. So they started telling me, hey, he was like, I need so much help. He's like, I need help with computers. Like, I'm not as good at that stuff. Can you help me? So I did. And then I found out I really liked it. So I got licensed as a certified appraiser. Well, eventually, all of that led to me getting into real estate. And then what started out to be a part-time gig has turned into a team that sells 600 houses a year, which is how we know each other, right? Through our circles and the circles that you run in. And we ran into each other that way.
That's right.
So that's how a kid who wanted to, like, have a Bible study and play guitar ended up into real estate. And it's like,
Okay, so you're going really fast. I got to go back. I'm going to bring you back for a moment. They put you on a liver transplant list.
yeah.
See, I don't want to skip over this, okay? This is really important for people to hear this. They put you on a liver transplant list. They tell you to go home. You go back to your mom's. What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm back at my mom's house, and obviously there's different schools of thought, Eastern medicine and Western medicine. And so there's some Western medicine that's like, hey, let's put you on, things that are gonna, control the amount of bilirubin in your body. So it's gonna, like, pull it all together. And then certain stuff that's helping you go to sleep and stuff that's helping you get awake. And, so I was being pumped with that. And then, my mom was like, hey, we should try something that's, like, different, because that we've tried this for basically a month and it's not working. And so we went for acupuncture, and I stopped this Western medicine. Again, like, I am not a doctor. I do not recommend anyone do, like, follow whatever your doctor says. Right. But this is just my story. I stopped all of the drugs, everything that the doctors had given me. And I was like, this is not working. And I had the church come and pray for me. So, it says in the Bible, like, and the elders came around them and laid their hands on him and they prayed for him. And that's my story. So I can't, like, I might be crazy and I might not have, whatever. You might think whatever, but that's what I did. I read it. I believed it. They did it. They anointed my head with oil. And then I went and I had acupuncture, and it was the first time that I was able to fall asleep. So because it had kept me awake, all these drugs. So I was awake for like 2-3 days at a time. With my liver, like, shutting down. So we started acupuncture, and then I started a few, like, really homeopathic remedies. So we went through that, and within 40 days, it was like 40 days to the dot, and all of the stuff started, like, to come away from my face, all the yellow, and I started to, like, have a normal skin tone again, which was really incredible. And so, I wish that I could say that I was, like, patiently, like, happy or, like, thankful or anything like that. I was, like, beyond upset. My life was, like, falling to pieces, Maria. I thought, I was actually engaged to be married at the time, and I had to cancel the wedding. Everything was just put on hold because of this thing that showed up in life that I felt like I had no control over, that I didn't cause. It wasn't like I was, like, massively drinking and my liver shut down. It wasn't because, I was doing drugs. It wasn't because I was doing any of these things. It just showed up. And I think, like, one of the hardest things for us to swallow in life are things that, like, that are out of our control. And it was out of my control that came in. And it felt like it was like I had to give up control in order to, see the healing that was on the other side. So really, really challenging time.
Wow. And So in 40 days, you were better
40 days. Exactly. Yeah.
with
40 days.
no,
It all started
with
to fail.
no, with no drugs.
Well, so again, we went on like, I know it's like crazy. I don't know. It's called like bovine bile salts. I don't know. It's like they put me on
Okay,
some
no,
like,
nothing. I don't think it's crazy.
yeah, I
Just
mean, I'm just telling you what I just,
so tell us what it is.
well, yeah. So you go to like a naturopath and you're just like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what's going on in my body. And they're like, okay, well, let's look at the whole being of the human and let's see what's going on. It's like, well, are you stressed? It's like, well, of course I'm stressed. My life is falling apart, but then we start talking about like, well, what's out of balance in your body? And my liver, basically all the bile in so I know this is a real estate podcast. We're talking about
No,
my
no,
med.
it's not. So
So
it's not
all
a
of
real
the
estate podcast. I interview a lot of different people from all walks of
All
life.
right, cool. I love it. So basically, the bile in my body had, which is what your liver puts in, it produces and puts it into your stomach through either
Yeah,
your gallbladder, etc.
I'm familiar.
If you like leave, it's like bacon fat. Like if you leave it, it like hardens up. So essentially, what ended up happening is it's producing the stuff and it needs to get into my stomach. It blocked up in a duct. And so what ended up happening was the duct got blocked because of my two, blood disorders, and it created basically like some sort of blockage through like almost like salts or whatever got in there, and it clogged it. And so what ended up happening is all the bile ran into it, and as I kept eating, it just kept blocking up, and it like bacon fat, it just hardened everything in my liver. So my liver like shut down, almost like froze. So it basically like wasn't doing its job. So I would eat food and just
Were
wouldn't
you?
process.
Did you have pain?
No, no pain. There was no
You didn't
pain.
feel like you didn't feel anything. You couldn't tell anything was different.
No, no. I
You
mean,
just
like you can't. I mean, you're completely different color. You couldn't like
outside of the
think straight.
color,
Like,
like
yeah, you can't think straight. Like there was no pain, but I couldn't like think straight. My body wasn't working. It makes you insanely itchy. So when you have immensely high levels of bilirubin, it makes you feel like underneath your skin, like it's an itch you can't get out. So my arms would bleed and my legs would bleed because you just scratch them so much to try to get at the
because there you feel it. There's like a thing there, but there's nothing there.
yeah, you can't get at it. So I'd have to take like baths all the time. And I can't
Like
think
an
of the story, but
autoimmune.
like, yeah, but that's what happened. That's what happened. So
So you get through this. 40 days. You're miracle cured,
yes,
basically.
it was a miracle.
Then what happens? Then what do you do?
Yeah. So then from there, life just like cleared out. I eventually got married, and life started to like restructure, and then eventually I got into real estate sales.
So
Yeah.
what year was that?
2011, I started selling real estate.
So like a year later.
Yeah, a year later. Yeah.
And so it was all rainbows and roses.
No, it wasn't rainbows. I got married. I'm actually no longer married to that woman, which is another absolutely like insane story about how that went. And then, I'll tell you the next part of it. So the next part, I get into real estate sales, and I had a really tough start to it. I thought I was like some cocky little kid who knew how to appraise property because I'd been a real estate appraiser. I was like, I know what these guys, know how to do this. Realtors don't. And started appraising and selling. I was doing both at the same time. And a couple of years in, my career turned around. And the reason it turned around was because that same builder that I worked for, here's the wild story. I was working for that builder before all this liver stuff happened. And I remember working for him, like digging ditches, Maria. Like I was like the lowest laborer in the company. And one day he was like, okay, well, I want you to build me a brick pathway at my new office that I just got. And I was like, okay. So I'm building this pathway. And I just remember, I was talking to my friends at college who were all doing everything that they wanted to do. They were, and I'm from this like Christian community where everyone's like getting married like super early and everything else. And it felt like life was just flying along for them, but life was not flying along for me. And I was like building a patio for some guy. And I remember just like taking those bricks one day, and I was so angry. I like slammed them down into the pavement. And I was like, I looked down, and I was like, I started to get emotional, and like the tears were just like on these bricks. And I was frustrated. I was honestly just angry. And I was like, my life's going nowhere. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to be a bricklayer for the rest of my life. God, you put this big, thing in my heart to go and like lead and like share your story and share all this stuff with people. And I'm doing none of that right now. And I don't like you. I'll put it nicely of what I said to God. And yeah, it's wild, Maria, because years later, I remember I had my real estate license, and I reached out to the builder and I said, hey, like, what about me selling some of your houses? And he was like, no. And then I pitched it again, and he was like, no. And then for the third time, I went back to him and I was like, hey, give me a shot at this. Let me show you what I can actually do. And he had seen all my progression and like how I had started selling real estate and everything else. And I walked up that same pathway that I built and walked into his office and signed $10 million worth of listings and walked out, and it totally kicked off my real estate sales career. Because I thought, like, for myself, like, okay, you're going nowhere, but what happens years later, you can't see it in that moment. You have no idea. And people have no idea what story's being written. They always feel like, yes, like I have the solution. I'm the captain of my destiny. Like kind of like you got a part in the story. You definitely get the ink. You definitely have the ability to write that. But like sometimes there's an author who really has a better thing planned for you. And that's like one of the parts that I love to share with people. It's like, you think you've got something great. You imagine it. And you might even be somewhere today that you're like, I dreamed of being here years ago. If I had known that I could be here in 10 years, then I'd be super happy. I remember my goal, Maria, was to sell one house a month. That was my goal. We sell more than a house a day now. And it's like, that's not what fulfilled my heart. That's not what actually made me happy. That's not actually what I truly, truly wanted. What makes me happy is that in this company, for whatever it's worth, I get 50 plus lives that I get to interact with. The same fire that was inside of me at 17, 18 years old to be a pastor is the same fire in me today about leadership. It has nothing to do with the fact that I could sell cars tomorrow. I would do exactly this. I would create a team.
Definitely don't want to be selling cars right now because their whole system.
No, you don't.
Their whole system is down.
No.
Like their whole system is down. They can't. They have to write deals by hand. They can't do leases. 80% of the car dealers in America can't actually really do. It's like
it's a tough time.
It's like being in your house and not having any electric, water, gas, and having to stay there. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I would wonder what would happen in the real estate industry if that happened.
Yes.
But I digress. So go back to leadership. So you wanted to be a pastor, and I think you have that role with your people, right? That leadership role. Obviously, it's not a pastor, but idea. You're leading people. They're following you. So what do you think, based on you have 50 people in your company, what do you think the number one thing that holds them back from living the life of their dreams?
Yeah. So, the cool thing about being a leader of any kind is that you always get to experience probably what people need with you. You have to experience it first in your own life. That's what I found. So, like, in order to lead another, you have to experience it first. Because how can I tell you where to go if I haven't already gone there? John Maxwell says that a leader knows the way, they go the way, and they show the way. But if we went hiking and I've never walked the path before, I'd need a map at least to show you. I'd need signs along the way if I had never gone there. But someone who you go with, who's actually walked that path a number of times, they don't need either of those because they've walked it. And so the number one thing that I see people struggling or bumping up against is the thing that I had struggled with so much before. It's the magic of what you're looking for is in the work that you avoid. And that work that you avoid continually is always getting into conversations with people because you might get rejected. That's it. And it's the hardest part about sales for most people that I find is their fear of rejection. It's something I've had to walk through my whole life is like the idea that you can present something that you feel like is intrinsic to who you are. And then if they reject that, then they reject you. But that's just something that you learn is not true. What they reject is they reject an opportunity. They reject a moment. They reject a listing. They reject a type of presentation, and all of that you can use to your advantage to like learn how to be better. But they're not rejecting you as like a human being, and you only grow through that. So that's the number one thing I've seen people. They have a huge fear of rejection.
Fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that you can get through fear of rejection by doing it thousands and thousands of times?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it something that's more ingrained in our being?
Yeah, so I think like as like
Or
humans, like we're like social creatures. Like sales in and of itself is the ability to navigate social circumstance to provide someone what they want. And like your brain's gonna do what it's supposed to do. Like a person that like if I try to sell you something, your brain's going to naturally bring up every reason as to why you shouldn't do it because that's just a normal brain. It's a good brain in action. The brain also wants to be a social, it wants to be in social connection with other people. And rejection at its core is against that. It's in contrast to being accepted. Being accepted is like, oh, cool, you're part of the tribe, and you can survive if you're part of the tribe. But being rejected from the tribe is like it's like primitive. So
well, the rejection though comes from people we don't even know, mostly.
Sure.
You know, David, it's funny you're saying all this, right? I feel personally a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot removed from it. And I'm not sure if it's because I've done it so many times that I don't literally care. I'm just looking, my attitude is I'm looking for the people that believe I can help them, that want my help, and not everybody wants it or deserves it.
Well, the cool thing about where you're at, and that many people get to when they've eventually done it enough times, is the belief that I just stated before of rejection equals I'm not part of the tribe. They feel that if I get rejected, I'm no longer part of the tribe. But if you do it enough times, then you realize like, well, that doesn't actually happen. You don't get rejected so many times that like you go home to your family and they're like, I don't like you anymore. The problem is if you're a real estate agent and you're only selling to your family, that can happen because you're constantly pitching to your family at dinners and everything else. And they're eventually not going to want to bring up the word house or home or sale or sold or any of those things if you're just only selling to them. So again, I would agree with you that like repetition, it's the amount of volume that you're interacting with people, other people that you don't know, that is the key. So when people are like, oh yeah, you should only like, work your sphere or do any of those, great, good opinions. All of it works. Just if you want to get over rejection, like if you want to get over rejection, you have to go and do this to a lot of people who you do not.
So I'm going to make a statement and I want to know your thoughts on it. You can build a business on your SOI. That is what's told to millions of people that get in the real estate industry. Sure. Every single, well, not millions coming here, but the millions of people that are in the industry, that's what's told to them. What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, on sphere of influence? Yeah, you can, sure. You can build a business off of anything. I like, if you go to enough conferences, you can have people that are like, I build it off of YouTube and I build it off of new construction. I build it off. Sure. You can build it off anything.
No, but no, seriously. I'm very serious about this because there's some companies that say, just call your SOI, ask them for business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you believe that anybody has an SOI big enough to sustain a real estate income that is enough to do well year after year?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on like how you define like your sphere of influence. Like I know, like in my case, like I built my business because my church knew me, and I had 600 people in my church. And
Okay, well, that's not most people. That's not happening
for sure. So if we define sphere of influence off of like your
what's most people have? I say, how many people are at your wedding? 100, 200 people.
Yeah,
that's it. That's your SOI.
Yeah. So if that's a good one. I like that. I really like that a lot. So if you define it off of that, I don't think so, because I don't think enough people are moving inside of that. There's not enough for you to create critical mass. And what I mean by critical mass is I try to explain to real estate agents as, if you want like that gravity of business, the way that you would think of a planet has gravity, it pulls things in. Everything has gravity. This water bottle at some point has some level of gravity that's associated to it. But the problem is most people's sphere of influence is like it's like super small. If you want to have the Maria Quattrone sort of gravity of business where people are calling you consistently, you need to have what's critical mass. You need to have enough of it. So that's why I think units are so important, where it's like, I'd go get business from literally everywhere. That's what I personally would do. I'd call expireds. I would do open houses. I would do literally everything until you've got something of mass. And then how do you define that? Well, that's some simple real estate math, where people move in every single 10 years. So take your database, divide it by 10. Awesome. Who's in the funnel between discovery mode and action mode, right? Which is a couple of stages in between. And so it's going to be a small number out of that SOI that you build, out of that database that you build. But these companies that are just telling you, hey, go and sell to your friends and family, their goal is 3. Their goal is that you're going to sell to a friend or family member. You might even buy a house yourself. You're going to get lucky out at an open house, and then some random person's going to call you. That's it. They're going to make their few, bucks off of you, and then you might change shops. So I think it's a silly model just to go out and only think about selling your sphere of influence.
But I think that's the premise of a lot of people when they come in the industry. That's what they think, and that's what they're told. That is what they're told. I've seen it. I've heard it. I've witnessed it. And I think it's one of the biggest lies of our industry. I think that most people that get in have, and there's an 80%, 87% fail rate. I think most of them don't have a chance in hell. And they never did from the beginning.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's but I often think that that training is taught by managers who didn't make it selling, because they also took that approach and made a couple of sales and now get paid a set salary.
Yeah, I mean, this is one particular company I'm speaking about, and I'm not going to speak about who they are, but you probably can get the drift. Nonetheless, I think that if somebody's coming in the industry today and they ask me for my advice, I would tell them to join a strong brand, join a team. Don't join a company, join a team, or a team that is a company, the best one that you can find in your local area, and go run with them. Go play with them. Go have fun with them. Learn from them. Be open. Be a sponge. And it takes a couple years to get your mojo. I would say a minimum of 2, if not 3.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Maria. And I think that's often because, it's part of this fear of rejection. People have to be able to do those units. I remember I sat with one of the number one loan officers around. He did 1,000 units, just recently closed 1,000 units. And he was
Who is that?
I'm just, his name is James Allen. He's one of the guys at Movement Mortgage near where we are. And he was like, I feel like I'm just beginning to understand the lending business. And that's just, I thought it was a humble statement by him, but it was a profound one at the same time, of saying, I need to have this amount of conversations to truly master something, to have those 10,000 hours. If it was 10 hours for a loan, okay, now he's got 10,000 hours. If you're spending 10 hours on a transaction on the seller side, like you need 1,000 of those. So you really, 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 truly understand this. And the idea that you're going to get into this business, learn how to fill in a couple of blanks in a purchase contract and make several $1,000s, like that couldn't be farther from the truth of like trying to really understand this business. And you're going to have to go through some ups and downs in order to get to the other side and figure it out.
Oh, predictions, 2025 predictions.
Oh boy.
Is there a mass exodus, or is all okay?
Oh, yeah. Are you asking? Okay. So, what people are going to do? Well,
this is just your thoughts.
Yeah. For my thoughts, it's like any business. Like I think a ton of people are leaving the car business, because it's immensely challenging in order to do it. I looked at something on Yahoo just the other day that showed, car insurance and, had it was the highest affected by inflation. The insurance business immensely under duress right now. So people are leaving that business. And the real estate sales business, it is also under duress. And part of that is due to disruption, and part of that is due to what's happening in the economy and the policies that are in place right now that are causing it. And so I think people will continue to leave places where there's a lot of friction. So I'll leave it with this. Businesses that have low amounts of friction that allow you to do that business speedily and efficiently and profitably are always going to attract people. And real estate right now has created so much friction between how we're compensated, the types of things that we can say, that like all of this has added so much friction, and friction, people are adverse to it. So they will move away from that path to a path of lesser resistance.
I'm going to make a comment based on that. I've been in this for 20 years, celebrated 20 years in March. Over 3,500 transactions.
That's a lot.
I am a machine. And all of this stuff is even on my last nerve. And part of it that's on my last nerve is that how dare the government step in, right? The DOJ wants to step in and tell sellers how they can pay their money. And that to me is a bigger problem than all of it, because it's a control. It's basically communism. And I am strictly opposed to anything that isn't from a capitalist society, which is what has made the great USA of America. Yeah. And I don't give all this stuff, buyers, sellers, all the agents fighting with each other. I don't care about any of it. What I care about is that every time they take a piece of our freedom away, and they've been doing this since 1960, okay? There's like the World Grand Plan, whatever that is, but there is. Look at COVID. Look at what COVID did. We didn't have to social distance. It's bullshit.
Oh, you're talking about some hot button stuff, Maria.
I mean, it is what it is. This is the world. This is life. I'm not sugarcoating anything anymore. No, I'm not playing a pawn. I'm not going to be somebody to just be lip service. I'm not doing it. So I have a disdain for what's happening in the industry. It's sickening.
I don't think you're alone. I really don't. I think for so many people who I talk to across the country, they see what's happening and they feel like it's not, it's gone beyond like, okay, I get you're trying to control this or control that. And it feels like mass control at this point. So, and it's hurting people in the ways of like exactly how you said, sellers telling them how they can spend their money and can't spend their money. One of the biggest things I think that people don't know about what's going on is that the pendulum always swings. That's what I notice, and that happens. I'm not that old. I look it, but it's just life happened on me. But I always see the pendulum swinging, and it swings one way and then swings back to the next. It swings one. And this is an example where it's like, well, sellers, you have to pay real estate agents in a certain way. And what's going to end up happening is buyers are going to get disenfranchised in this market. And I can see it happening in 3 to 5 years, a huge another lawsuit coming because buyers aren't fully represented because of the way that these policies just show up. So I think it's a silly knee-jerk reaction at something that doesn't really solve the bigger problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we get to be the solution and figure that out and educate people every
My
day.
solution is just keep on rocking and rolling and keep on having great guests like you. So before we wrap up, David, 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Ready? Number 1, guilty pleasure.
Oh, guilty pleasure. I love food. Easy, like hands down. Like I am a foodie. So I love to cook. If that's what I get to do, like all the time, I would love it. I would be a cook.
Kindred spirits. I love to cook too.
Oh, dude, it's the best.
I'm already I've been planning the weekend menu all week.
Come on. If you're not planning the weekend menu,
we're going to be down the shore. So I don't know what we call the beach here. We go down the shore. And then when you're down the shore, if you go to the beach, that means you're on the sand.
Yes.
We have a different terminology here, but yeah, cooking's great. Okay. Now, when I ask you this question, but you cannot tell me your children because if people want to,
what's your big lie or something like that?
No. What are you most excited about for your personal future?
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I love the fact that I'm trying to be honestly like the best person that I can be. And when I look at what I feel like the purpose of my life is, I feel like the purpose of my life is to be like God and reflect God. So I see so much in my life that is not like that, where I have quite a lot of shortcomings in my life. And I'm eager for days that I get to see more of God show up in my life and less of my ego show up and less of my, my other problems, show up in my life, the crutches that I have, the vices, everything else. I'm excited for that day. And I think people, we get 80, 90, maybe if we're lucky, 100 years on this planet. And if I I asked 2 buddies the other day, what do you think the whole point of this all is? Right. And they had some really cool responses. And I think one of the worst responses that we get lied to about, if we're talking about lies, is that he who has the most toys wins. He who has the beach house, the house at the shore, he has all, because you can get that and you can just have a nicer, it goes forever. But I think a really well-lived life has to do with you discovering your calling that God's put in your heart, and you get to share that with the world. You also at the same time get to walk through this earth school that, people talk about it as just a place where we're learning about ourselves and we're learning about, places where we get to lay down ego and take up, selflessness. And so that's what I get excited about. I get excited about the person who I get to become later on down the line. So that's probably a selfish answer, but
I love it. It's awesome. David, I am so excited to have had you on the podcast today. It was a great story.
Thank you.
Continue to be the solution for your team, your family, yourself. And does everybody get a hold of you?
If you want to get a hold of me, you can. Otherwise, Maria is probably more interesting than I am. But if you want to, I am on Instagram. It's David N. Brooke, as in N as in Nicholas is my middle name. So David N. Brooke, or you can visit our website at brookegrouprealestate.com.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Maria.